your smallest meal of the day should be dinner, so that when you're sleeping overnight, you're getting into a good fasted state.
Yeah.
And then when you wake up in the morning for sunrise, you're both fasted in ketosis and you're getting the red and infrared light from the sun. That's like supercharging mitophagy. That's really turning on that process.
Doesn't he also say that you should eat before the light kicks in or something like that?
You need to eat breakfast before UVA rise.
Why is this?
So we talked about this in episode 24 of my podcast,
Yes.
which basically was about the effect of UV light on mitochondria. So essentially, UVA light, when it interacts with mitochondria, it slows down mitochondrial electron transport. It slows down energy production.
What is the difference between UVA and UVB again?
UVA is slightly longer wavelength than UVB.
And that's in the morning, early.
Yes, so it's sunrise, and then depending on the time of year, let's say up north where I am in New Jersey, sunrise is like, I don't know, 7 o'clock. And then UVA rise is like maybe 8:15 right now.
Okay.
And then UVB rise maybe around 9, for example.
Okay.
It's not exact, but it's something like that. In the summer, you get a shorter window. And if you're near the equator, it's really short. Like UVA rise is like 15 minutes after sunrise.
Shit. Okay.
So during the summer, it's like you have shorter windows to play with. But essentially what's happening is your body is going to be really good at assimilating the nutrients and the electrons from food before that UVA rise, because the UVA is what's going to kind of put the brakes on mitochondrial metabolism, because it doesn't actually need that energy. Because if you're using UV light to power, let's say, energy production, you're powering the structuring of water as well, which facilitates metabolism. You don't need as much food. And this also directly relates to the alpha MSH story, because alpha MSH, like I said earlier, from UVB light suppresses appetite. So your body's literally telling you when you're getting UV light, you don't need to eat, because you're not going to be hungry. You're just naturally not going to be hungry. Mm-hmm. If you're hungry, like that could be a sign your light environment's off, or it could be that your body actually wants food. Maybe it's not getting enough energy from the sun or whatever. Maybe it's a cloudy day, or that's also why you need to eat more in the winter, because there's no UV light. You're going to be hungrier, and you also need to eat more fat and protein. You need the electrons. Yeah, you need the electrons because there's less. You're not getting much from the sun.
Right.
And you're also needing more fat and protein from these animal foods to power heat production in the mitochondria. You need more mitochondrial function and activity because it makes heat to help maintain your core body temperature. Mm-hmm. It also helps with the browning of fat. So brown fat in particular is very metabolically active. Fat, babies, like 35% of their fat is brown fat when they're born. That helps them to maintain their core temperature. Brown fat makes heat.
Okay.
The thing is, though, brown fat, you kind of use it or lose it. So a decent portion, I don't remember the exact amount, maybe like 20% of adults are walking around without any brown fat because they never get cold. So when you get cold, you can both preserve and amplify your current brown fat, and you can also cultivate something called beige fat, which is when your subcutaneous white fat starts to become more mitochondrially rich and cultivate more mitochondria. There's actually a paper out there that says like mitochondria give cells a tan, and it's because they literally look like brownish red. That's why brown fat, like when I used to dissect mice all the time, I cut them open, right on their back there's a butterfly shape of brown fat. It literally is brown because it's mitochondrially rich.
You know they have all that hair on their back.
Mm-hmm. Well, you have to cut it open and then you peel it open and under the skin.
Right, you would think, so the hair still absorbs the light?
So the brown fat is to maintain their body temperature, because small animals have a high surface area to volume ratio. They dissipate a lot of heat. Compared to us, our body size allows us to maintain a bit more of our heat, but for them, they are more active. Even at just like this room temperature is going to be a little cool for them, so they have more brown fat. Mm-hmm. So that brown fat is not only really good for maintaining heat, but it's also a major sink for glucose and fatty acids from the bloodstream. It's also a major endocrine organ. It's involved in the hormone system of the body. The brown fat. So the brown fat is in this axis with the thyroid, which allows it to take up T4, the inactive thyroid hormone, and spit out T3, the active thyroid hormone. So if you're cultivating your brown fat and you're getting cold regularly, you're doing cold plunges or whatever else, to maintain that brown fat, it's going to help to maintain healthy thyroid function. Combine that if you're like also getting sunlight while you're doing cold, for example. Mm-hmm. That sunlight, that far infrared light in the sun, is helping to structure the water of the body, which is increasing that exclusion zone water, like I said before. That exclusion zone water is required for healthy thyroid hormone signaling. So people who are hypothyroid, for example, if they're just given a pill to like make up for that, we're not dealing with the issues at hand, which are likely low brown fat, because if they have low to no brown fat, they're not getting that proper conversion into T3, the active thyroid hormone. And at rest, they're like really cold averse. Like they want to bundle up all the time, and their doctor will tell them, oh, just stay warm, like stay bundled up or whatever, not realizing that's making the problem worse because now they're cold averse because they're not converting enough of that T3 to help support metabolism. Thyroid hormone's really important for stimulating metabolism at like a very fundamental level. But they're also, you know, like also subverting the issue by, let's say, taking exogenous hormones. And in addition to that, if they're not getting enough sunlight, that far infrared light, they're also not structuring that water within their cells that facilitates thyroid hormone signaling. So cold and sun at the same time is like magic. So if you're in the ocean, even better, because the ocean is like supercharged grounding. You're getting the salt water that's very conductive. It's allowing more electrons into your system. Or if you're using something like a Morosco Forage, which I have at home, which is a cold plunge, it's fully grounded system in a metal tub. And I have like 10 pounds of Epsom salts in it. So when I get in there...
Epsom salts in it?
Yeah. Magnesium sulfate.
Really?
So when I get in there, it's like basically a mock ocean. Obviously, it's not as good as the real thing, but it's pretty dang close. And so it feels very grounding, relaxing, energizing. So you're getting all these benefits at once. And I put it in a spot where I get pretty good sun all day on it. So it's like, that's really, really good biohacking or bioharmonizing.
They're sending me one. I should have it in like 2 weeks.
That's so good. I'm so excited for you. I love my thing. I'm in there like every day.
Do they, what temperature do you have it at?
So Jack recommends between 50 and 55 degrees for the metabolic mitochondrial benefits.
Yeah.
I keep mine at 55 and I'll do like 1 40-minute session a week. And then I'll do like 2 or 3 between 10 and 30 minutes.
Okay. I have like a chest cooler at my house that I retrofitted into a cold plunge. I keep it at 40.
Okay. Yeah. How does that feel? How long do you stay in
there?
It
sucks. It's terrible. It's too cold.
Do you put salt in it?
I do it for like four minutes.
Okay.
No, there's no salt in it. I didn't know anything about the salt.
Oh, yeah. So if you learn from Tom Seeger, he was the first guest on my podcast back in October, and he talked in the second part of our podcast about different salts you can add that can kind of like hack the system to make it even more beneficial. He'll do magnesium salts. He'll also do like copper salts and zinc salts. So it's like, depending on what you got going on, you can hack that a little bit. But the Epsom salts are like a really tried and true one that are just great for your muscles and magnesium status, relaxing, but also like kind of energizing at the same time.
Yeah, I've never felt the best I've probably ever felt in my life is like after surfing for an hour in 50-degree water and then like getting out of the water and it's still cold, especially in California. You get out of the water, it's freezing. After getting out of the freezing cold water, it is probably like the most alive I've ever felt after doing something like that.
Yeah, I mean, it's no surprise. You're getting all these free electrons. You're getting the stimulation of the cold. You're getting the sun. It's like the perfect synergy to support your mitochondrial health. And we can sense that as like energy and vitality.
Right.
I think our brains are constantly surveilling our bodies' bioenergetic status, essentially. So when we feel low energy, it's literally like low energy availability. Like our mitochondria are not, like they're not working to the extent that we need them to be. So I think it's a really good readout. Like if people have brain fog or just like low energy, they're dragging their feet, they're sluggish, like that's a sign that we need to make some changes. Also, speaking of light, I want to make sure I mention this, is that there was a study earlier this year, I believe Glenn Jeffries published this, and it's about red light. And he showed that if you shine 670 nanometer deep red light on somebody's shoulder for 15 minutes, and then you give them an oral glucose tolerance test, which is basically a way to detect how well they clear blood sugar and their like insulin response. So it's like a standardized drink of glucose you essentially take, and then they look at how your blood sugar looks after you drink it. He showed that using that 15 minutes of deep red light on the shoulder and then doing the OGTT 40 minutes later reduced the blood sugar response by 30%. So now imagine taking your meals outside where you're not only getting 670 nanometer deep red light, you're getting all the light spectrum between 600 out through 3100 infrared, like the infrared A light. While you're eating, now you're able to clear your, not only your glucose, but also other nutrients, your bloodstream as well. So it's just
shit.
Yeah. So if I already tested this myself, and I've met many clients that do that as well, wearing a CGM and then taking your meals outside, or wearing a CGM. Yeah, that's it.
Light stimulation of mitochondria reduces blood glucose levels. Wow.
Reduced by 27%.
That's wild.
And that was just from shining it on your upper back for 15 minutes. Now imagine like just sitting outside with your shirt off and like taking your meal out there. Like that makes a huge difference over time when you're looking at blood glucose dynamics, metabolic health. It's really just like a canary in the coal mine. It's a sign that like things are good. Like you're able to process those nutrients well.
Okay, now one more time, can you explain to me, like I'm a fifth grader, why eating breakfast before the UVB light kicks in is important?
Yeah, so it's actually UVA, but
UVA.
they're pretty close.
So basically like after 30 minutes of waking up, right?
Yeah.
Within 30 minutes.
So number one, you're most insulin sensitive first thing in the morning.
Okay.
So that means you can clear the nutrients more effectively that you're taking in.
Okay.
That's particularly true if you're eating in a circadian manner where your dinner's also pretty small, because what that means is then you're basically clearing, there's something called glycogen in the liver, stored glucose in the liver. You need to actually break that down before you get into ketosis.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah, Nick Norwitz explained this to me pretty well.
Exactly. So if you're eating a big, heavy carb-loaded dinner meal, you're not going to get into ketosis during sleep. You're supposed to be getting into ketosis during REM sleep, the later sleep cycles, and then that really synergizes with the sunset, or the sunrise rather, in the morning to get mitophagy going. But if you're having that small, lower carb dinner meal, then when you're waking up, first of all, you should be hungry, because if you had a small dinner, you're going to be hungry because you're in ketosis as well.
Yeah.
And then you're eating in that first window, and then when UVA light comes into the picture, that starts to put the brakes on mitochondrial metabolism. So you're not, first of all, you're not going to want to eat as much because your appetite's going to be suppressed. So that should be a sign that things are working well. But just at like the physiologic or the cellular level, when the brakes are put on mitochondria, we don't need to make as much energy from the mitochondria. We're going to leverage other things like the water, for example, the exclusion zone water, that is this battery that is directly essentially powering metabolism, independent of ATP. So it's more of like, I would say the details aren't as important. The main part of the story is that if you're eating in a more circadian fashion and you're in alignment with the sun, then your appetite should naturally mirror what's good for you.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. And that means that when there's no UV light in the wintertime, you're going to be hungrier more. And you actually need that to help maintain your body temperature and your metabolism.
Oh, really?
Yep.
So even during the winter months when you are hungrier and you're not getting as much light, it's better to eat more often and more quantity?
Yep.
Wow.
Yep.
Fascinating.
You can just trust the signals your body's sending you, essentially, if you're in this regulated state. If you're eating a lot of hyperpalatable foods and you're sitting inside all day getting your dopamine system hijacked, then you can't trust the signals your body's sending you, because it's like telling you to eat crap and just keep sitting around.
Yes. The more I sit around, the more I want to snack on shit all day.
Exactly.